welcome everyone here to La Casa De Freddy, the first installment ever. It's going to be something new, something fresh here. So I want to invite my guest here today, D. Jordan Castle, what I like to call the voice of Prestige Wrestling. My boy Jordan, how are you doing today?
Freddy, I am doing great. I was chatting you right before we went on air that it is so cool to actually be chatting face to face as you get on the computer, obviously, but to be having a proper conversation after so many months and years of, Twitter and DMs and that kind of thing. It's cool to make this happen. Yeah. And I am so honored to be the first guest on this new endeavor, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming on here today. And mentioning a Prestige, we're here to talk about Prestige Roseland 5, which you will be in the booth for commentating. Is that correct?
That is correct. It'll be me alongside two of my favorite partners, not just at Prestige, but across the entire sort of pantheon of independent pro wrestling. And that is Cody Von Whistler, the Pacific Northwest's very own, and of course, the Z-Man Brian Zane of Wrestling with Regret. I've called a few Prestige shows with both of them, but never all three of us together. And I think it's just going to be the dream team in every sense of the word. And I'm so stoked for it. And the card, as we're going to go through today, is spectacular. So I can't wait.
Yeah, big stacked card, in my opinion. 10 matches in total for this. I
believe so. Yes. That sounds about right. Yeah.
Thankfully, Prestige uploaded like a match card graphic so I can go in order, because I really wasn't sure how I was going to go through this in order. But let's get this started.
I will say, for the way I talk with William Quintana about Prestige all the time, we talk about this, about how wrestling people are dumb and how it actually goes upwards. So obviously Blackwood and Penta will be the main. And it's the opposite way around. But you'd be shocked how many times, both to me and especially to him, people have been like, you're saying that this such and such match is like, why is Malachi Black and Kid Bandit opening the show? Like, people just don't have any concept of it. So that is the way it's supposed to be read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shout out Will for the Prestige card. All right. So we're starting off here with the Allen Angels / Revolver $15,000 bounty here, which is Brian Key taking up the offer against the ace of Prestige, Sonico. Now, my question is, I wonder where Allen Angels got this money from, in my opinion.
That's what I'm saying. So if I remember correctly, some of the money is from Allen Angels and some of it is coming from our enemies at the Wrestling Revolver. Yes. But yeah, the fact that Allen Angels' AEW money hasn't dried up at that point, the fact that a word I cannot say on the air, the fact that it still has that much cash in the bank makes me very, very upset. Mm-hmm. But that being said, there is a bounty from him. There is a bounty from the Revolver. These two evil, nasty people have joined forces in Allen Angels and Sami Callihan, which is actually interesting if you think about it, because on Impact TV recently, Sami Callihan has split from Allen Angels as part of the design. And so I guess they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, Sonico and Prestige both so hated by the Revolver and by Allen Angels that they decided to join forces monetarily and bring Brian Keith in. I'm stoked with this one. I've been fortunate enough to follow a lot of Sonico matches. He is spectacular. He's the ace for a reason, and he's undefeated at Prestige with victories against the likes of Black Taurus, Speedball Mike Bailey, Drexel, MV Young, Akira, Titus Alexander. List goes on and on and on. And I don't know, as much as I love Sonico, he's had a crazy couple of months with death matches against Shunma Katsumata and big Prestige Wrestling title matches against Alex Shelley. I feel like if only because of that exhaustion, Brian Keith might be the man to unseat that streak. He might be, I would say, the one in something, but I don't actually know. Hold on, wait, I got this. Girls and no. He could be the one in 4-1. So remains to be seen. I don't know. Remains to be seen. But definitely rooting for Sonico. As much as I love Brian Keith, BK is the man. Ring announced him in Tundra Garden State. But in this case, he's representing the evil Allen Angels and the evil Wrestling Revolver. So you got to go with Sonico.
Yeah, this devolved into something bigger than just Allen Angels and Sonico. This turned into just Prestige versus Pro Wrestling Revolver. Let's see. I'm really hoping to see how Sonico is able to counteract against this big bounty, because I don't know how I'd feel if I had $15,000 put on my head and having someone, a whole different entity, just send someone over and just try to whoop my ass.
I probably would not feel good. But then again, that's, Sonico's so proud to fly the flag of Prestige, right? Mm-hmm. Like he is the ace for a reason. He's the guy consistently He was the Pacific Northwest representation when we were in Asbury Park, New Jersey, about a month back for Hybrid Moments. Like, he is consistently the guy to fly that flag for Prestige. I think there's no one better for the job, and there's no one more willing to take the job. But yeah, I certainly would not feel great if there was a bounty like that on my back. But if there's anyone for the job, it's the Lucha Ghoul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Now on to next, we have a showcase of sorts with the trios match. It is Travis Williams in State of Emergency versus Ethan HD, all caps, Chris Brady, and the superhero Jaden. How do you feel about that match?
I'm stoked for this one. You know, something I've loved so much about calling these Prestige shows is obviously it's the big matches that catch people's eyes, right? It's Malachi Black and it's Athena and it's Speedball and it's Maki Ito, who are spectacular. Don't get me wrong. But what I've loved so much, having been to Portland a handful of times now, having, you know, voice of Prestige, I don't know if I'd go that far, but having called so many shows for them so consistently over the last year or so, what I've loved so much is becoming familiar with more of these hidden gems in the Pacific Northwest, in the sort of Cascadia region. Which is apropos since the Cascadia Cup is coming up in July. It's just so cool to see, because I feel like you hear so much about East Coast wrestling, West Coast wrestling, and a region that kind of falls under the radar is the Pacific Northwest. People from Washington, people from obviously Portland. So yeah, man, I'm stoked for this one. Travis Williams is someone who just a couple months back returned to Prestige after a lengthy absence and was victorious against Ethan HD in some, shall we say, very dubious circumstances in our opener. But I mean, talk about on a star-studded card, getting the crowd kind of kicked off hot, getting things started and rared and ready to go. Those guys tore the house down, and he's coming from Canada, and I believe because of some sort of issues with travel amidst the pandemic, of course, that is a big reason why it took so long for him to return. But with him being back, I could not be happier to have him back, because nasty sort of conceited attitude aside, he is a spectacular wrestler. And same with State of Emergency. They've been at a couple of shows at the Hawthorne against C4, against the Workhorsemen, terrific tag team out of Canada. So I think this Canadian trio, this evil Canuck threesome is going to be a great foil for some fan favorites in Prestige. Those, of course, being Ethan HD, as we mentioned, definitely looking to bounce back against Travis Williams, get some revenge against Travis Williams after that loss at Reality Unfolds. And then, of course, you have Jaden, who Jaden to me is like that guy, not taking anything away from any of these guys, but Jaden to me is just that guy where it's like he is raring and ready to break through. Like there is an intangible it factor about Jaden when that music hits. I'm still mad at him because he used to have a song from Sonic Adventure 2 as a theme song, and he changed it to the Bonnie Tyler song, which is great. It's a spectacular entrance, but I wanted to call that Sonic Adventure 2 entrance because I'm a Sonic Adventure 2 mark. But that's aside the point. Jaden is a really special talent, not only because of what he can do in the ring, but of how he can connect with a crowd. And if you've ever seen him live, you know what I'm talking about. And he missed the last Roseland, and I know talking to him personally, he was pretty bummed about that after some pretty stand-up performances, specifically against Jack Evans, picking up a huge upset victory at Roseland 3. So I'm super stoked to see Jaden back. And same with Chris Brady. Chris Brady's another guy who just like, ever since I've started working Prestige, you always just see kind of the unspoken hero, just doing things old school, doing things the right way, setting up rings, making the drive from all the way up from Washington, which is not a short drive at all, and just kind of putting in that work, paying those dues, and to finally see that paying off at this level. He's worked a couple of shows at the Hawthorne before, but to finally see him making it to the Roseland Theater is just really, really special because he's one of the hardest workers out there, in addition to just being a really electric performer like Ethan HD and Jaden. So I'm totally stoked for this one. I'm so glad that so many of these guys are getting that spotlight.
Yeah, I'm real excited for that trios match coming up. And right now, the next match would be a singles match between Nick Wayne and Judas Icarus. Now, Judas Icarus is a guy I've been seeing recently on social media, being a guy who's on the come up right now. On most recently hitting over to the East Side and working shows like Wrestle Open and Limitless Wrestling. And I feel like Nick Wayne now being more of an established star now compared to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I feel like it's kind of switched up to where Judas Icarus is kind of like the guy who's needing to prove himself, and Nick Wayne becoming from that guy to now becoming the guy to beat. How do you feel about that match coming up into fruition?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier on Travis Williams coming from Canada, someone who was a part of the very early days of Prestige and now kind of reestablishing himself. I think Judas Icarus is very much in the same vein, also coming from Canada, was also seen in Prestige many years prior, and is now kind of reasserting himself as a force to be reckoned with. And it's such an interesting thing with Nick Wayne, right? Because I work with him a ton. I'm very fortunate to call his matches, announce his matches, work with Nick Wayne a lot. And believe me when I tell you, I'm cherishing every moment, because I know soon he's going to be on TV and he's going to be making millions of dollars. And 10 years from now, I'm going to be pointing and being like, that multi-time world champion, I drove to San Francisco or whatever with him when he was 16. People are going to be like, no, you didn't. And I'm like, no, I really did. But that's a little ways off, thankfully. But no, it's always a funny thing, because he's so good. And he not only is he so good, but he's been so consistent that you often forget how young he is and how much he still has left to grow and how much he still has ahead of him. Because I would agree with you that, like, on paper, despite Nick Wayne being the younger man, both in Prestige and in independent wrestling as a whole, he is more of kind of the stalwart here. Judas Icarus is fighting an uphill battle, if only in terms of popularity and notoriety. And you got to think that getting a victory against Nick Wayne, who's just a couple months away from smashing on national television, I believe they confirmed the match with Swerve Strickland as being his debut this summer. And so for Judas Icarus to pick up a victory, to hold his own against a guy like Nick Wayne, you got to think would go a terribly long way as far as sort of re-cementing himself back in Prestige wrestling. I'm stoked to see that guy back. I think he is terrific. He had a spectacular match that I called over at VXS against Jay Malachi, Mania Weekend. Mm-hmm. Those guys tore the house down, opened the show with a bang, just coming off of a big win against Minoru Suzuki. So, I mean, he's on a roll in a big way right now, in addition to those East Coast expeditions that you mentioned. So I cannot wait for him and Nick Wayne. I think that one is going to be blink and you miss it. So don't blink, because you'll miss something special.
Yeah. All right. Now, our next match is a very controversial, very heated type of rivalry. It is Midnight Heat versus C4 for the Prestige Tag Team Championships. Now, this is a story that's been brewing for quite a while now. So can you tell everyone at home who's not familiar what's going on between Midnight Heat and C4 right now?
Yeah, this story, this blood feud, really, for all intents and purposes, between both of these teams has been brewing for the better part of half a decade. The first match that Midnight Heat ever had in Prestige Wrestling, they lost to C4. And things really ramped up at Roseland 2 in February of last year, when there was a fatal four-way tag team match to determine the inaugural Prestige Wrestling Tag Team Championships that included C4 and the Midnight Heat. Of course, C4, Guillermo Rosas and Cody Chun, the Midnight Heat, Eddie Pearl and Ricky Gibson. And in that match, where C4 became the inaugural Prestige Wrestling Tag Team Champions and held those championships with honor and unintended prestige for many months, defending a couple times in multi-man matches that also included the Midnight Heat. But ultimately, it was back at Nonstop Feeling in the Hawthorne Theater, Midnight Heat versus C4 for the Prestige Tag Team Championships, where C4 were, again, as a broadcaster, try to remain unbiased, but were, for all intents and purposes, screwed out of those Prestige Wrestling Tag Team Championships. There was a shoe filled with a piece of brick that was clocked over the head of Guillermo Rosas, and he was knocked out cold, and the Midnight Heat stole those championships. But interestingly enough, before Eddie Pearl and Ricky Gibson were really able to get underway and have this reign of dominance they talked about, Ricky Gibson unfortunately suffered an injury. It seemed like there was maybe a change of heart. He was relinquishing these championships. Of course, in typical Midnight Heat fashion, they snatched them back. They said they will never give up the championships. Since then, they have been stripped of the titles, but have involved themselves in C4's business back at Reality Unfold, choking them with a chain, attacking them post-match, just in every sense of the word, making life a living hell for C4. And that's really been the story, not just of the last couple months, but of Prestige since Roseland 2, is C4 and the Midnight Heat being kind of the Batman and Joker, destined to do this forever. no matter who Midnight Heat challenges, no matter who C4 defends against. It all comes full circle. It all comes back to them with mind games and sneak attacks and all that professional wrestling goodness. And it is all coming to a head at Roseland 5 for the vacant tag team championships. Not the Midnight Heat defending, because they have been stripped. They claim that possession is 9/10 of the law because they do have the physical belts with them. But no, it is for the vacant tag team championships. A little over a year after this kind of rivalry got reignited at Roseland 2. And it all comes down to this, all the, cement filled shoes and all the chain choking and all the relinquishing, not relinquishing, getting screwed out of the titles, getting injured. It's so much. It's an absolute powder keg, and it's going to blow this Saturday.
Mm-hmm. With everything that's happened so far, the break, the chain choking and all that, it is really unpredictable to know what exactly is going to go down this Saturday against these two. Midnight Heat have tried everything in their power to take out C4, whether it be by legal or illegal means. Who know? I firmly believe that C4 are not going to underestimate any sort of dirty tactics Midnight Heat are going to bring into the table, and I feel like they're really going to bring a new type of ferocity when it comes to Saturday to gain back those prestige tag team championships.
I want to believe that. I mean, Guillermo and Cody, those are my boys. I love those dudes to the moon and back. But that being said, I don't know. Not only, I mean, listen, the Midnight Heat have always been good. Ricky Gibson, Eddie Pearl, they've always been a terrific tag team. But in recent months, ever since that injury, ever since they were stripped of those championships, I've seen a new side out of them. Just this vicious, mean, dare I say, sort of evil edge. And I feel like that, combined with the tendency to bend the rules, to break the rules in pursuit of those championships, I think these guys are dangerous in a way we've never seen before. So as much as I'm rooting for C4, as much as they're the sentimental favorites, I would not count out Midnight Heat. Coming off of a huge victory against Aussie Horse, Adam Brooks and Warhorse at Nervous Breakdown over Mania weekend. So I don't know. If ever there was a time for someone to defeat C4, I think this might be it. But I'm with you. I'm rooting for Rosas and Sean. Those are my dudes.
Yeah, real heated conversation right there. All coming ahead on Saturday. Now, up next, we have the Daddy versus the Devil. It is Effie versus Drexel. And in that one, we've seen some really insane shit coming out of Prestige Wrestling, whether it be Mal coming in. No, not Mal. Yeah, Mal. Well, you can consider Mal. But Sonico with his death matches. Kid Bandit and Drexel is another example. But, who with someone as, let's say free-minded as Effie, who knows what type of chaos can happen down in Roseland 5. What are your thoughts?
Listen, I mean, people don't necessarily think about it. It's not necessarily the first thing you think about Effie when you think of Daddy, because he's such a multifaceted wrestler, right? He's able to do so much. He's someone who can get technical. He's someone who can get silly. He's someone who can get super athletic. He is sort of as flexible and as much of a chameleon as you see in a ring. But people forget that Effie knows how to get crazy, man. Mm-hmm. He's entered himself into TOS before. He's fared very well there. He has faced Nick Gage in a crazy main event at GCW Black Label Pro 2-Cup stuff. He has been to Japan and gotten a little wild there. More recently, he's competed in War Games alongside Alley Catch. So Effie is one to get crazy. He hasn't necessarily made a career out of it in the same way that Drexel has, certainly not in Prestige. I mean, the last time we saw Effie in Prestige, if I'm not mistaken, was Roseland 2 back in February, the same event I was just talking about, where C4 captured those tag team championships and became the inaugural champions. But we haven't seen him since Roseland 2 in Prestige. Him and Bussy, big tag team match against Pax Americana, Dark Sheik, and MV Young. So this is definitely going to be a different go around, definitely a little crazier. We'll not have the villainous alley catch on the apron to tag out to. But that being said, I mean, if there's anyone who can get nuts and match the craziness of Drexel, I would say that Effie is right up there with the best of them. This dude can get wild, and I think he's going to show the entire world that this Saturday.
Yeah, and with everything, Effie is a very busy guy. You can tell he is everywhere around the whole stage, whether it be the world and all that, including not including everything like podcasting and his Twitch and all that. Do you think that's going to be a factor when it comes to fighting Drexel? Because I really don't know what Drexel does in his free time. You know,
I don't think anyone knows what Drexel does in his free time. And frankly, and this is probably a bad thing to say as a journalist, I don't want to know because it's probably fucked up. It's probably bad. It's probably not good at all. He's a crazy, evil, demented sicko. I mean, you see what he does professionally in a ring. I don't know what that guy gets up to on his weekends off. But no, that being said, I think it's a great point that Effie has that sort of crazy workhorse schedule. He's all around the world. He's an international superstar in addition to those sort of extracurriculars you mentioned. But I think in a weird way, it kind of evens out because Effie maybe has the crazier schedule as far as like how much he's working, but then you got to think about Drexel's style because Drexel consistently works these wild, hardcore matches. He's putting himself through glass. He's getting clonked with steel. He's replacing the ropes with barbed wire. And so he might not be as exhausted because of the travel and because of the wear and tear of airplanes and hotels and rental cars and the whole 9 yards. But he's wrestling these crazy batshit matches with a lot more regularity than Effie. So I think in a weird way, that sort of wear and tear on the body kind of evens out, but it'll be very interesting to see this weekend.
Mm-hmm. All right. Our next match is a sort of impromptu type of match, you could say. It is a triple threat match between Miyu Yamashita, Lizzie Hall, and Trish Adora.
Yes, Liza Hall. It was originally supposed to be a 2 one-on-one matches, I should say. Liza Hall versus Trish Adora and Queen Aminata versus Miyu Yamashita, if I'm not mistaken. But it was turned into a triple threat match when Queen Aminata, unfortunately, unable to appear at Roseland 5, hoping to have her back very soon. But that being said, you want to talk about making lemonade out of lemons. I think this is going to be spectacular. Liza Hall coming off the heels of a big standout debut against Masha Slamovich back at Reality Unfolds. Trish Adora, last time we saw her in Prestige Wrestling was several months back. But who did she face? None other than Miyu Yamashita. And while she was defeated by Yamashita in that match, more than held her own, more than proved herself. And then, of course, Yamashita. I mean, what more can be said about Yamashita that hasn't already? Breaking back out in the United States independence back in 2022 as part of Roseland 3. We kind of made our Prestige Portland debuts on the same night, and that is where the similarities between myself and Miyu Yamashita end. She is a certified ass kicker, man, and it has made me so happy to see her get more sort of worldwide, nationwide recognition through not just Prestige, but a bunch of other independent promotions, and most notably, most recently, I should say, in AEW and Ring of Honor, because she is just terrific, man. I mean, just an ass kicker in every sense of the word. You want to talk about stiff? I feel like it's a very overused kind of word, that verbiage about like strong style and, you know, getting really hard with the kicks and your strikes. You can kind of roll your eyes at it at a certain point, but man, Yamashita she's something else, dude. She is spectacular. Always love the chance to call any of her matches. Have had the good fortune of doing it several times now. And she is just a killer. So I'm super stoked to see her run it back with Trish Adora, because the match they had back at Perseverance in Pomona at the Glass House was a belter. And to add Liza Hall into the mix, a true technical wizard, a veteran of nearly a decade at this point, if I'm not mistaken. Again, another true prodigy coming out of Canada. I am stoked for that. I think a good triple threat match is always a great time. You know, some of my favorite matches are triple threat matches. Look back to like the Lesnar versus Cena versus Rollins of the world. I think that magic can be made with a triple threat match, and I think magic will no doubt be made with all three of these ladies, three of the best on the scene right now. And they're going to hurt each other, man. Yeah. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, Trish Adora is a hard hitter, if I could say so myself.
Oh, yeah. No, Trish is great. I mean, I feel like she's been sort of a best kept secret for so long, and someone that people have said, like, why is she not signed? Why is she not doing more? Because she's so terrific and so proficient across the board, really. And I think it's so great that she's gotten more opportunities with sort of Ring of Honor in recent months. And I'm glad to have her back, because that one match at Perseverance between her and Yamashita was great. And again, to see them back at it is just going to be, it's going to be a treat, man. What more can be said?
Yeah, I feel you, brother. All right. Our next match is a very, very special one. One I was not seeing, and one I was not really, how could I say this? One I was I was very surprised by it when it was first announced. It is the Perfect 10, Shawn Spears against filthy Tom Lawler. Now, Shawn Spears making his Prestige debut, a big debut too, recently coming back to AEW television, and Tom Lawler just being that guy, just being that dude, killing the independents. I'm sure it's going to be a great match, but it's a clash of styles, you can say, because Shawn Spears is very traditional type of wrestler. Meanwhile, filthy Tom Lawler is has a very dirty type of MMA style. What are your thoughts coming into this match with Tom Lawler and Shawn Spears?
I think this is going to be great. I think Shawn Spears is someone who has experienced a lot of evolution in recent years. Of course, coming into AEW, betting on himself, leaving WWE shortly before the pandemic, transforming himself as part of the Pinnacle alongside Tully Blanchard. We saw the black glove, we saw the blonde hair. And in recent months, as you mentioned, kind of reemerging on AEW, has really kind of returned back to his roots with the whole Perfect 10. And I think that's so exciting to see, because, it sounds corny, but they say, like, if you love something and you set it free and it comes back to you, then you truly love it. And to see that sort of full circle journey for Shawn Spears and to catch him right in the middle of that is so exciting for me. There's a reason that, the 10 chants were a revolution almost a decade now, back at Full Sail. And sure, they're fun to chant. It kind of became a thing in and of itself, but they all started because there's an electricity with Shawn Spears. He's someone who has been so good for so long. And as has kind of been the story of his career, both on and off screen in so many ways, kind of gets overlooked. Like, it's one of those things where you're so good for so long that it doesn't almost, people almost take it for granted, right? It doesn't necessarily surprise people in the same way. And I'm so glad that the eyes are back on Shawn Spears, because I think he's always deserved to have them. And I could not be more excited to have him back, or to have him in Prestige Wrestling for the first time, I should say, against filthy Tom Lawler, another sort of master of his craft. I think there definitely is a style clash there for sure, with Shawn Spears' more pure technical acumen and filthy Tom's strike heavy sort of mixed martial art ultimate fighter deal. But that being said, I think they're both just masters of their craft. They're both at the top of their game. They're both so crisp and precise in everything they do. Tom Lawler, the longest reigning Prestige Wrestling champion in company history, over the course of the past year, has reestablished himself both as a solo star and as part of Team Filthy alongside Royce Isaacs and Jarrell Nelson in tag and trios action. You want to talk about someone who can do it all, just a true sponge. That is filthy Tom Lawler, and someone who I think kind of has a chip on his shoulder, because the last couple of times we've seen him at Roseland, he lost to Alex Shelley. And we know, if Nervous Breakdown, if Armenia Weekend show is any indication, he still hasn't forgotten that. He's still kind of carrying the weight of that. And so I think always trying to bounce back, always trying to get back into championship contention. A win over Shawn Spears would go such a long way in establishing that. I think both of these guys are terrific. I'm so excited to call another Filthy Tom match. I'm so excited to call my first Shawn Spears match. I think these guys are just going to put on an absolute clinic in every sense of the word. I was also very surprised when I saw this one, but it was an incredibly pleasant surprise, because I cannot wait.
All right. Up next, we have our sort of co-main event, you could say. It is the Young Boy versus the Mentor, Robert Martyr against Daniel Garcia. Now, this is a match I am really looking forward to, as are many other people. Robert Martyr is a guy who's been put through the ringer at Prestige. Guys like Minoru Suzuki, Timothy Thatcher, Vinny Massaro, and also Masha Slamovich also added to the mix. And now he's facing probably the
Hold on. I'm sorry, Freddie. I love you. You can't forget about Anthony Henry.
Oh, yes.
That was the craziest one out of them all, in my opinion. Things we carry New Year's. Oh, dude, insane. I was on the call with Alyssa Marina for that one. And again, on a spectacular show from top to bottom. These guys just sort of stole the show. A true sleeper hit. Martyr got his ass kicked, dude. Holy cow.
When Anthony Henry deadlifted him from the floor and just tossed his ass against the ring apron.
It's nasty. It's absolutely gnarly, dude. Yikes. It's absolutely gnarly. Not to get ahead of you, I know you have a question to ask, but I've been fortunate to be there for several of these sort of coming out moments for Martyr, as far as really proving himself as a legit star, as a legit threat to be taken seriously. And that's right up there with the best of them. That was special energy in the White Eagle that night, man. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. I totally messed up your preview.
No, you're cool. So now he faces probably the guy who is seen as the man who sort of molded Robert Martyr into who he is today. What do you think is going through Robert Martyr's head coming into his match against Daniel Garcia this Saturday?
Well, I think it's so interesting because we've seen a sort of trend in recent months, especially of Robert Martyr facing his heroes, right? These people that he's idolized growing up, these people that inspired him to get into wrestling, from Timothy Thatcher to Minoru Suzuki to Anthony Henry to Vinny Massaro. What I love so much about this sort of evolution of the trials of Martyr, if you want to call it that, is that Daniel Garcia is not that for Robert Martyr, right? He's pretty similar in age, maybe a few years older, but they're around the same age. They kind of came up together. So he's not necessarily someone that Robert Martyr watched on television while he was growing up, aspiring to be a pro wrestler. He didn't necessarily base his style off of Daniel Garcia, talking about Robert Martyr, of course. But I think it's no less special. I think, if anything, it's that much more special because these guys were training partners. They were friends. They were brothers. They traveled the road together. They trained in professional wrestling and mixed martial arts together. Before Daniel Garcia kind of blew up back in 2021, joining AEW, aligning himself with 2.0, joining the Jericho Appreciation Society, facing Bryan Danielson in a series of incredible matches, he was there with Robert Martyr. It was not to peel back the curtain too much, but it wasn't just shtick. It wasn't just something for social media. These guys, I can tell you, firsthand experience, were friends, were brothers, were partners. And, a lot has happened in 2 years for both Robert Martyr and Daniel Garcia. I know that Robert Martyr is someone who holds himself to a very high standard, sometimes maybe to a fault, is sometimes maybe too hard on himself, always pushing himself to be better than he was before, to reach that next precipice. There's a great film he released. I'm not sure if you saw, but it's definitely worth your time. It's called Stray, and it's kind of his internal monologue talking to two versions of himself. And at one point, he kind of spatters off a few things, a few verbal barbs, a few sort of cheeky insults that have been thrown to him by fans and detractors in recent years. And one of them is Wish.com Daniel Garcia. Wish.com Daniel Garcia. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. That's what Robert Martyr has been compared to. And that's in some ways how I feel like he kind of thinks of himself. And so this is not just old friends meeting up, blue chip buddies, having a little reconcile in the ring. This is as huge a test for Robert Martyr as the King or any of these sort of old head legends before him, because this is a guy who Robert Martyr wants and needs to be. And if he can hold his own, if he can defeat him, then I think that finally Robert Martyr will shut up so many of those detractors. I think finally Robert Martyr will prove to them, and maybe even more importantly himself, that he is not Wish.com anyone. He's the first Robert Martyr.
Yeah, there we go. Do you think Danny Garcia is going to hit him with one of these? One of the,
I don't know. Is this going to be a video podcast, or are we going to be able to see this? Or
yeah, no? yeah. This video podcast.
Okay, so one of these guys here. Yeah. I hope so. I can only hope so. I will not. I can assure you, I will not be as upset as Ian Riccaboni is on Ring of Honor commentary. I will not be nearly as furious. I will not. Beg for the big red X as Ian does. But no, I'm super excited to call a Daniel Garcia match. I chatted with him quite a bit over COVID. Actually, he's pretty tight with some buddies of mine. Shout out to Sus, shout out DJ Tony D, J Nav, John, Dave, boys. But I got to chat with him for a little bit, both on and offline, before, like I said, he really blew up, joined AEW, joined the JAS, had these matches with Bryan Danielson. And he's someone who I think has always had it. I remember seeing him in Beyond Wrestling as part of the Discovery Gauntlet, driving up and down from Buffalo in between college classes. And there's always been this intangible thing about Daniel Garcia, even before he won the Pure Championship and did all these things and achieved all these accolades that I've listed several times now. He's always had something, and to finally call a match of his when he's at this level, and somehow, as crazy as it sounds, is only going to get better from there, is crazy. And I'm stoked for it. It's surreal. I don't think it'll feel real until I'm there. But I'm really, really excited to call his match. Because again, same with Mick Wayne, as I said, 10 years from now, I'm going to be saying, I remember when, I was on headset. And people are going to be like, no, you weren't. I'm going to be like, I promise it is. IWTV. I have the footage. Mm-hmm. I'm stoked for that. I'm really, really stoked for that. I'm stoked to see Garcia, and I'm stoked to call Garcia, because he's something, man.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. All right, now it's time for the main event, the actual main event. One announcement I had zero idea that was coming was Penta El Cero Miedo being called out for Prestige Roseland 5. And I was like, holy mother of God. you want to make a first announcement for your fifth installment. Talk about a big announcement. This is what we're talking about. And now he's facing the aesthetic crippler Kevin Blackwood in the main event of that show. Kevin Blackwood is sort of in the same vein as Martyr, having to face many big time matches as well during the last year, back in 2022, recently getting a victory over Shigehiro Irie. How do you think that momentum is going to be able to bring him over and hopefully beat Penta?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, again, not playing favorites, but I as big a Kevin Blackwood fan as they come. I think it's been so cool. And weirdly in its own way, not to get sentimental on here, but weirdly sort of inspirational, because Kevin Blackwood is another guy like myself who moved from the East Coast to chase his dream of professional wrestling on the West. And he's blossomed in every sense of the word. He's totally, totally blown up, and has really, 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 for my money, become one of the best independent wrestlers in the world. I mean, truly independent, not signed anywhere, has not put pen to paper anywhere. He's gone to war with some of the best in the world and oftentimes defeated them. And talking about prestige, this sort of international gauntlet he's gone through against the likes of SB Kento and Mao and Konosuke Takeshita and Shigehiro Irie. He's made his prestige career off of facing and often defeating international superstars, specifically from the land of the rising sun, specifically from Japan. So that's what makes this matchup so interesting to me. It is another international star, but it is from Mexico. And of course, the lucha stylings of Mexican wrestling are much different than the sort of nuances of Japanese wrestling. So I think Kevin Blackwood is definitely going to need to shift gears and re-strategize to an extent. But I think with those victories we mentioned, with those huge standout performances we mentioned, if there's anyone up for the task, it is Kevin Blackwood. I have to think this is the biggest match of his prestige career. Huge main event at the Roseland Theater, the mecca of prestige, and dare I say, professional wrestling in the Pacific Northwest. This is it, man. Like, this is the dance. Mm-hmm. Again, we can be prone to hyperbole when talking about stuff like this, but against a star, the magnitude, one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, former AEW Trios Champion, the list of accolades goes on and on and on. A true superstar, a true megastar.
All right, sorry about that little cut right there. There's some technical difficulties, but we're back. As we were talking about Penta's sort of big reputation as a megastar, not only in Mexico but also nationwide. You also mentioned Pentagon's current title lineage being very massive and all that. A win for Kevin Blackwood here to really put him in a pedestal in the independent wrestling world. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. I mean, again, this has got to be the biggest match for Kevin Blackwood and Prestige to date. Main event, Roseland 5 at the Roseland Theater, the biggest show that Prestige Wrestling does, and for my money, the biggest show in the Pacific Northwest, and one of, if not the biggest shows in all of independent wrestling. It really doesn't get it doesn't get any bigger than that. Pentagon has won championships the world over. He has faced and beaten the best. He has truly cemented himself, in my opinion, as one of the best, most exciting, most dominant wrestlers in the world today. There's a reason, like you said, that when Penta was announced for Roseland, that you took notice, that the entire sort of wrestling world took notice, because he's not someone who necessarily takes these indie dates terribly often. When he does, you know it's going to be something special. So yeah, for Kevin Blackwood, this is it. There's no one, in my opinion, who's more ready for this shot, for that sort of sink or swim big match opportunity. But I mean, butterflies in the stomach got to be the size of eagles heading into this one, because this is huge. It does not get any huger than this. A true bona fide main event anywhere in the world. But it's happening in Portland, and it's happening this Saturday on IWTV.
Yep. Do you think Kevin Blackwood is ready for the mind games Penta brings to the table, with the glove thing and, the crowd chanting Cero Miedo? Do you think Kevin Blackwood is sort of prepared for that type of sort of being surrounded by a sort of different perspective?
I don't know if you can ever be truly prepared for it. I think you can do all the tape study. You can kind of like mentally ready yourself. But until you're there with 1,000 people in the Roseland Theater chanting Cero Miedo and just absolutely buzzing for this megastar that is Penta Zero M, I don't know. Yes and no. I think that Kevin Blackwood is a wrestler's wrestler. I think Kevin Blackwood will do his homework. I think Kevin Blackwood will train like an MFer. I think he will do everything in his power to be ready. But I think you got to expect the unexpected with Penta. And you got to know sort of way back in the back of your mind that you can do everything to ready yourself. But at the end of the day, it's in that moment. You're not going to know how it feels until you're there. So for Blackwood, it's not a matter of not being intimidated or not sort of being shaken by that, because I think it's impossible not to be, but he just has to know how to overcome it when it comes. You can't expect that it won't happen. You just got to know how to overcome it, how to ride that wave, if that makes sense. And I've seen Blackwood do it before. We'll have to see if he can do it again.
All right. Well, that was the entire card. Pretty big card, if I do say so myself, coming up this Saturday on IWTV. Pretty sure, yes, IWTV. At 7 p.m.
TV this Saturday.
7 p.m. Pacific time. Over here, Mountain Time is pretty weird.
Which is 10 p.m. Eastern time, and Mountain Time, you were saying, my friend. I'm sorry.
Yes, Mountain Time is really weird because it's like in the middle of both of them. So I'll be sure to catch it up on Saturday. I'm hoping I can. But yeah, where can people find you, Jordan Castle?
Yes, Instagram and Twitter at @JordanW_S. I'm on there. Do not use Facebook because I'm not an old person, and do not use TikTok because I knew I'd get addicted to it. So Twitter and Instagram, that's where it's at @JordanW_S. If you want to know what I have coming up, if you want to see clips from wrestling shows and upcoming wrestling shows and just follow the journey, that is where I'll be.
Yeah, and all your ring announcer needs and all that, commentator and all that, you go to your man Jordan Castle right here.
Yes, sir. Hit me up. Anything that requires a suit and a microphone and a loud voice and a lot of hair, I'm the guy for it. So please and thank you. Hit the line if you're looking for any professional wrestling broadcast needs. And also keep an eye on Prestige's social media channels. I believe Wrestle Prestige is their Twitter. And as far as Instagram, I believe, and I could be mistaken, it is the same thing. Yes. I believe it is also Wrestle Prestige. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to being a part of Roseland 5 this weekend. And I want to thank you again for having me.
No, Mr. I appreciate you. Appreciate Jordan Castle coming in. First episode of Casa De Freddy. Let's see if this is a normal thing, regular coming thing. But yeah, I appreciate you coming out and, giving us some insight coming in Saturday, hopefully. everything goes to plan and everything goes real good. Well, hopefully the show gets hot. You know, I'm pretty sure it is going to be, but I'm just real excited for Saturday.
I mean, it always is with Prestige. It always is with Prestige, and especially at the Roseland. There's a special sort of energy whenever Prestige comes to that theater, that beautiful purple building. It's tough to put into words, but they know what they're doing. They've really cultivated something special, both with the wrestlers and the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super grateful to be a part of it for a third time now. Technically a fourth, since Roseland 3, the first one I did was 2 nights. So fourth Roseland, but third Roseland weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people ask me oftentimes, like, what's your favorite place to work as far as location or an arena? And every time, without fail, I tell them the same thing. I tell them Roseland, the Roseland Theater for Prestige, because there's just something ineffably special about it. I feel like I've said that word a lot. I feel like I reuse that word, but I mean it now more than ever, because it is a special place, and it is a special building, and it is a special promotion, and it is going to be a very special event this weekend. So I know there's a lot of wrestling, an overabundance of wrestling, but if you are a fan, I cannot implore you enough to watch this show. I'm stoked to call it.
Yep. Yeah, Saturday, people. Wrestling Prestige presents Roseland 5 from the Roseland Theater. All right. I appreciate Jordan Castle for coming over. Thank you again, brother. And hopefully you have a good weekend today, brother.
Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
See you, bro. Thank you, beautiful people. You can follow me on Freddy Faded on Twitter and Freddy.Faded on Instagram. So yeah, I'll be keeping updated, seeing if this is going to be a regular thing or not, but hopefully it is. And yeah, see you guys later.